Welcome again to this module, which asks the question, how are cities addressing spatial inequality, taking the case of Cape Town? We're joined in studio today by Rob McGaffin from the City of Cape Town. You're most welcome, Rob. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So, Rob, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where do you work? And what is your interest in urban issues?
I am the Executive Director of Spatial Planning and Environment at the City of Cape Town. Prior to that, I was a lecturer at UCT in the Department of Construction Management. And in that program, I specialized in property studies, or on the property studies program. And then whilst I was there, I was also a co-founding member of the Urban Real Estate Research Unit, which looked at urban issues through a finance and economics lens.
Thanks for that, Rob. So I guess a good starting point would be to help us understand how the City of Cape Town understands spatial inequality and what are the key issues that preoccupy its attention in terms of how to address spatial inequality.
I think it's a great question. It's one that preoccupies a lot of our thinking. It gets debated quite a lot within that space. But I think it fits into a bigger conversation around the performance of cities.
Okay.
And really what we're trying to address in the city is to improve the city's performance from a efficiency point of view, a financial sustainability point of view, from an environmental sustainability point of view, but importantly from a social equality point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the spatial transformation comes into the equation. Although I think spatial transformation is a function of probably all of those things I've just actually mentioned, because urban efficiency can lead to a large degree of equality,
Mm-hmm.
or help to achieve equality in that space as well. So I think it is a multidimensional.
Okay.
But I think what we're doing in the city at the moment is actually asking some hard questions, because spatial transformation has been on the agenda for a long time. And if you think back to some of the early planning documents post-democracy, the spatial development frameworks going well back into the 90s, one of the key objectives was to achieve spatial transformation and a more equitable city.
Okay.
I think some progress has been made, but I think we would all agree we would have liked to have gone a lot further down the road in this regard. So I think that we're asking the questions, why haven't we achieved it to the degree that we should have and we wanted to? Because it was from no lack of effort or intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I think so what we're doing at the moment is perhaps questioning some of our key underlying assumptions, particularly around how cities work, and also the underlying assumptions with respect to some of our planning tools and instruments that we've been trying to use over the last 20, 30 years, but which haven't really been achieving the outcomes that we've wanted.
Help us understand what some of those mechanisms are that are geared towards achieving some of those multidimensional objectives. And I suppose also to understand how they have changed over time and why they have changed over time.
Let me take the last part of that question first. Why we're changing them or trying to review them as such, I think, is because we don't believe they've been as effective as we would have liked them to have been. It is quite easy to design an equitable city. It's quite a different animal to implement an equitable city. And so what we've been trying to look at is sort of what are the drivers of development? That's perhaps best explained or illustrated through an example or a question. A very simple question. For example, why is it so difficult to get well-located, affordable housing constructed?
Yeah.
Simple question, but it's a key question. And it's one that we need to keep asking ourselves. And where we're sitting with respect to that question, I think, is the realization that for development to occur, there needs to be a very simple equation has to play itself out. And that is, the value of what you develop has to be greater than the cost to do the development. And so when I say developer or as a developer, I use that word in a very broad sense, because a developer, in my view, is somebody who adds a room to their house or builds a backyard structure, as well as a developer who builds a huge development, etc., with thousands of units in it. But either way, doesn't matter. That equation has to that value versus cost ratio has to play itself out in that particular way. No sane developer or household would want to develop something where the value at the end of it is less than what it actually costs. The problem that we have in Cape Town, and in fact we have in South Africa, is we've got an affordability problem, and that translates into an income problem. Now, the reasons for that, the causes for that, are deep-rooted, historical, but also to do with this current state of the economy, levels of education, levels of skills, levels of unemployment, etc., etc. These are big structural issues, and they're not going to be addressed in the short term or easily. So that creates a challenge for us, because it means that value, and value is really simply put, what somebody is prepared to pay for it, either to buy it or to lease it. And when I say value, obviously there's environmental value, there's social value, and I'm using value in a particular way here. But from an economic point of view, that value is what somebody can and is prepared to pay for it. That is a function of somebody's income.
Yeah.
Now, in South Africa and also in Cape Town, because we have that income problem, there's a cap as to what that value can be, as to what somebody can and is prepared to pay for something. So what we're now realizing is that we have to look at the cost side of the equation, because if we can't push the values up, we've got to be able to pull the costs down. So we're doing a lot of work in trying to understand what are the cost drivers of development. And that again there are a lot of different cost drivers that we need to understand, some more important than each other than but another. But cumulatively as well, even if it's a small cost driver, cumulatively with other cost drivers, it starts to add up. So one of the pieces of work that's been done, both in the city but also outside of the city as well, is to look at what the development process looks like and how long that actually takes. And so the scary reality in Cape Town, it takes on average about 7 years to get a development off the ground. So they actually unpack what happens in that 7 years. We're estimating that probably between 40 and 50% of that time is just getting land to a point that you can put a brick in the ground or start a development on it. And that time frame is incredibly costly.
Yeah. And
so again, rough back of I used to say cigarette box calculation, is, for every year that you delay something, you're probably looking at 15 to 20% increases in costs. And so if for every year that you extend the development, the costs go up, and the affordability is therefore but reduced. And so you are able to target a certain market or household at a certain level, and a year later you've got to keep targeting higher and higher. So we have, unfortunately, that equation I was speaking about is going the wrong way. The process of getting a land to a point where you can start doing some development is what I call land production. And that really has got three components. It's getting access to the land, it's availability of infrastructure, and it's getting the development rights. Now, in all three of those, the public sector has a role to play.
Yeah.
The state owns a lot of land, although that is divided between different spheres of government as well. So sometimes it is municipal land, but it could be provincial land, could be national land, etc. And And the city has embarked on a significant program, a land release program, which is actually a mayoral priority program of releasing public land for different uses, including social housing as one of them. So that's one area in terms of assisting with the land production process. The second one is significant spend on infrastructure. I don't know if you've seen the press recently, etc., but we're just about to table the budget, and the budget is escalating or ramping up significantly. And over the sort of next 10-year period, we're looking at a budget of about 120 billion rand being spent over that period of time, which translates into 10, 12 billion rand a year. So that's another key area in terms of putting in there. And then a lot of focus has been done in terms of how do we streamline the development process, getting the rights to be able to do what you need to do. And that is a complex exercise. One, because it's a lot of different pieces of legislation that drive that, both at a local level. So the municipal bylaw would be one of the key pieces of legislation there. But there are others. There's the national legislation on environmental legislation, national heritage legislation, etc., etc. But we have to find ways to align and streamline in order to speed up that process. So quite a lot of work has been done in that space.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for the time.